people hear the word energy and they think oil. And oil is not the only part of global energy markets going forward. I mean, oil is a big driver of production and energy supply, but natural gas is growing a lot. Nuclear is growing a lot. Alternatives continue to grow. And so we think that there's things that look really good and things that look a little more challenged as we head into next year.
How much does China control your life as an investor in oil and energy?
It's funny. Today, it's a lot less about China as you think about energy and way more about AI and the demand that we see for energy broadly. So when you talk about an oil molecule, clearly China is a big driver there. But when you're talking about energy broadly, it's really about all energy supply. And can we provide the electricity and the other energy resources that we need to satisfy technological advances, to satisfy a rising middle class globally, urbanization, desire to travel, and so forth. So here and now, I think everybody thinks China's slowing. It's really more about, hey, is energy intensity changing in other ways, and how's that going to drive things?
And you brought in AI, and that, in essence, is the data centers need a lot of energy in order to run. I keep reading information that, yes, the power demand is going to be huge, but we're maybe overestimating that demand right now. How do you view it as an investor?
Yeah, so we think about sort of long-term cycles as much as we can, and we spend a lot of time thinking about what the future of energy is going to be, and we start with where demand is going to go in the next few decades. So we built a model that says, what is energy demand going to be in 2040? And there's really three factors that you would care about. The first is population growth. Basically, more people in 2040 means more energy consumption. The second would be economic growth. Bigger economy, more energy consumption. The third one is a trickier one, which is the energy intensity of the global economy. Basically, how efficient can we be consuming energy to generate economic growth? We've been of the view that we are going to get a lot more energy efficient. Technology is changing, costs are coming down, there's desire from governments and consumers to be better users of energy. I'm a little bit worried about that assumption, to be honest. It does feel like the economic growth is becoming more energy intense as a lot of this technological growth is going to be really high energy usage. So, we've thought that the demand for energy was going to rise a lot. And candidly, we think we might have underestimated it. Now, there's huge expectations for AI in the short term and what that might mean for energy demand. Are those overstated? Potentially. But in the very long term, we think we are in an energy addition world. We really need to add as much supply as we can.
When we're talking about oil, we're not just talking about energy. We're talking about all the other stuff that oil makes. I brushed my teeth this morning. Oil was in my toothpaste, and it was used to make my toothbrush. And that's just the start of it. I mean, are you smart enough to tell me what the breakdown in a barrel of crude is? How much of that is used for energy, and how much is that used to produce all the stuff that
100% no.
Okay. How about you?
I mean, a lot of oil demand comes from transportation fuels. It's flying, it's driving, it's all that sort of stuff. Clearly, there's a lot of it that goes into every other product that we use. But when you talk about oil, it's not always just the oil barrel, right? You get a lot of those petrochemicals from what we call natural gas liquids, NGLs. When we think about energy, again, a lot of times the conversation becomes around oil prices. But as we think into the future, we think oil demand is going to keep growing a little bit, and then it sort of plateaus later this decade and declines a little bit in the 2030s. But huge increase in demand for natural gas for all the reasons that you laid out in terms of how it's ubiquitous in our daily lives, but then also as global consumers consume way more of all this stuff.
So what do you like right now? Like, what do you want to invest in?
Yeah, so we look at the world as, hey, it's not just, like I said, oil and gas. It's all of the energy value chain, which includes both traditional resources and alternative resources. And I'd say we see massive winners across both sides of the table. On the traditional side, we really like U.S. natural gas. We think LNG demand as we export to global consumers is going to rise a lot in the next few years. We also think the supply is going to be a little more curtailed into 2025 and 2026. So we like natural gas. We really like the Canadian oil sands, where we think it's very low variable cost. They've built their businesses to survive $60 oil, and we think they're generating a lot of free cash flow that they're delivering to investors. And we also like sort of integrated energy companies that are pursuing the energy transition themselves credibly, using their existing infrastructure and assets to help sort of drive emissions changes. I'd say on the alternative side, we are very bullish. The companies that are building out the electrification assets and infrastructure we need to satisfy the sort of growing electricity demand, companies that build transmission wires and transmission lines and so forth. And we're also really bullish nuclear in the long run. We do think it's going to be about refurbishing existing nuclear assets and building new nuclear globally to satisfy the demand for low carbon energy.